Yeah, Tristan from Purpose Advisory. I wanted to update you on our most recent Life and Money event on the topic of Bitcoin's down. Should I buy? Had such a rich conversation yesterday. That's Thursday, the 17th of March. It was. Everyone had a lot of questions on their mind. Most of the people were still trying to work out, should I be investing in Bitcoin? What do people think about Bitcoin? Others were thinking more about when to buy. Is it near the bottom? Is it going up? So interesting, different thoughts. I wanted to give, I guess, some of the takeouts that came up through the conversation. We spent a fair bit of time up front talking about the different people who are for and against Bitcoin. And something I pulled together recently is just a really simple analysis of, I guess, the camps that you got. You got the naysayers and skeptics, of whom Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, his sidekick, very famously against Bitcoin. And there's a lot of people in that older echelon of society. You got Janet Yellen, you got political figures. The heads of government and, I guess, World Bank type organizations are typically against Bitcoin. They're typically older people, and they typically stand in establishment situations. In other words, they hold a lot of power at the moment, and they don't like uprising sources of power that could potentially, I guess, rob or detract from their autonomy and authority. Then you have the diversified investor types. These two, Cathie Wood down the bottom, and Elon Musk, are some of the early investors in crypto. Elon has one of the largest holdings of Bitcoin in the world, as in through his company, that is. Cathie Wood is famously supportive of Bitcoin. You have, rapper and like celebrity type figures as well, like Snoop, who've moved into the metaverse and have literally land and run concerts through the metaverse. You got other investors from Shark Tank and these sorts of things who Mark Cuban's been famously supporting a range of different cryptos. You wouldn't say he's all in on crypto. It's one of his many assets, but he's for the concept and he believes in what it represents. There's a lot of people in that category, and they typically are in the middle age. They're kind of not fully in, but kind of like on the verge, and they typically represent the more entrepreneurial, open-minded types who are wanting to bring change. And then you have the all-in on crypto. You've got Lynn Alden. This is Plan B. You got Michael Saylor, and of course Gary Vee. So these are the types who, for years, have been talking about it, espousing its benefits, been doubling down on their investments, leveraging up as well, and will be very, detailed in their analysis. And if you're already a crypto investor, you're probably looking to these people for input. You're probably shunning these people as the old fogies, and you're probably mindful of what these guys have to say. But wherever you stand, it's important to recognize that there are different views, and not everyone agrees. And yes, there are common traits to each of these types, and you might fall into one of these buckets or the other. But there's reasons why each of them hold their views, and we spend a bit of time unpacking, the environmental concerns, the quantum computing concerns. Will Bitcoin be replaced? What's happening now after Russia? We had a chance to discuss all of those sorts of topics in our convo. We also had a look at the price. So at present, Bitcoin's sitting at about $40,000 US. If we look at the actual price chart, you'll see that from early 2020, you've seen this meteoric rise running up to early 2021. This is when Elon Musk bought in his big lick of crypto. And then this was when Elon Musk decided that Bitcoin had some environmental concerns, and you had a pullback from a very strong growth. Like this was, I don't know if it's going to let me do this. No, it's not going to let me drag. That's fine. We pulled back almost 50% to a bottom here, around 30,000. We had a bounce up and a bounce back down. So I would say from this meteoric growth, it had been previously 3,000. If I drag this a little bit further back, you'll see that the COVID dip got us to, doesn't say here, but actually went as low as 3,000 and then up to as high as 65. So it makes sense that we need to sort of find our keel again. So the past 12 months even has just really been bouncing down and up and down again, finding our bottom. And in my view, we have not yet found a bottom. Technically speaking, if you believe in technical analysis and put a stock in it, this pullback was not fully enough to complete a correction. It was a partial correction. Therefore, this is all part of the correction, and we're on our way still down to break below this bottom point. So in my view, I believe there's a higher probability that we'll see Bitcoin pull back below this bottom point. I know a 50% drop sounds meteoric, but if you're in the crypto world, you know that it's a very modest correction. In fact, 60, 70, 80, 90% corrections are not unheard of. So before we see the next meteoric rise, which people hope will look as beautiful as this one, gangbuster type rises, up more than 5-6 times. Before we see the next one go, above 100,000, it's most likely we're going to have to see more downside. That's very much my view, and my probabilities would say it's likely above the 20,000 mark. There is a theory that would state that the cycles of Bitcoin minimum will never drop below the previous cycle's maximum, and the previous cycle ran up to almost 20,000, and then it sort of pulled back, and then it's run up obviously higher up to the 60s. And if you believe in that theory, it's just a theory. It's got no, I guess, proof behind it. But up until now in the history of Bitcoin, it's never fallen below the maximum of its previous cycle. So you could say that the lowest it will drop is 20,000. Obviously, it could go lower, and then it's likely to at least drop below this this point here of sort of 28,000, 28,500. And in my view, it's likely to fall somewhere in that range. And in order to fulfill the technical correction point would be 26,500 thereabouts, and it could go further below. So at the moment, in the short term, we're seeing a lot of sideways going on. We talked a lot about the state of change in the market. So ever since these highs, you saw a lot more institutional investment starting to come in, especially in these past few months. Probably since the beginning of the year, you see massive investments. We looked at a few articles of which companies and banks were getting in, and it's all the big banks, really. The largest, the JP Morgans, Fidelities, all these guys are now holding a chunk of crypto. And not just that, but the big four accounting firms are now framing themselves as crypto analysts and auditors. So there's just a lot more focus, and therefore you're going to see very different movements in the crypto space. If you didn't already pick up, I'm obviously bullish generally on crypto and Bitcoin longer term in my personal portfolio, but I acknowledge it comes with the risks. There's a reason why smart investors like Warren Buffett don't invest, and it's largely because he doesn't understand it, but he's got other reasons as well, and it's worth bearing that in mind. So generally speaking, the consensus in the group was most people thought that Bitcoin will be continuing to drop and then will probably run pretty strong. And that's in line with my view as well. No one thought that Bitcoin's going to run from here, which is interesting. And a handful of people thought that Bitcoin's going to run sideways for a period of time, 6 to 12 months. So that's interesting. The other thing that people discussed in the group was who to follow, like who are the people that you look at for good information. So I thought I'd list a few of the YouTube channels that I put a lot of stock in. So More Crypto Online is a really great channel. If you like technical analysis, Ben, who runs this, has great technical analysis, and you'll see that every single day he'll do Bitcoin, typically twice a day, and then a handful of other altcoins if you're into that. And I don't know how many videos he's published, but he must have done more than 1,000 or two, because look, all those videos only get us back to 3 days ago. He releases this stuff prolifically, and he's very sensible. He's very mathematically oriented. He doesn't make projections based on what's going to happen. Everything's probabilistic. It's quite useful stuff, and he uses the Elliott wave as a method. So More Crypto Online, definitely worth. I listen to this almost every day, and I subscribe to him. I find him very valuable. Nathaniel Whitmore, who does the breakdown, he's great. So he has this lady, Lynn Alden, who I pointed out in that clip. She's great. He interviews really quality people. He gives the macro. So whereas Ben is the technical analysis, this guy is very much the bigger picture, the macro, and especially to Bitcoin. He's focused on Bitcoin. This channel is sponsored by FTX, I believe, but he's involved in their company, and he qualifies that. I would say his analysis is probably right up there as the top analysis on macro Bitcoin. Invest Answers, I really like this guy, James. He's just lovely. He had a career in finance, and exited that in 2017, got into crypto, realized it's so helpful, and then decided to help people that don't have wealth to build wealth. He doesn't sell things. He's very lovable. He's very detail oriented. He'll do the analysis. He'll share a lot of the analysis. He's optimistic. He's not hopium oriented, but he definitely brings a positive vibe. So when markets are down, he's trying to keep that up. But at the same time, he'll look objectively at things. He has great analysis of, should I invest? And he'll look at the fundamentals behind a cryptocurrency, and he'll do some really good interviews with some of the more, let's go to the video set. You'll see some of the recent, chatting with Plan B, for example. He chats with a few other guys in the marketplace, and they do weekly reviews. Bill Miller, anyway, he probably hasn't done interviews for a little while, but he'll produce a video almost every day, and he also loves to give back to the animal. So suffice to say, I'd say Invest Answers is great as a onboarding, early stage, starting out in crypto. Kikko News is not just Bitcoin focused, but David, who sort of anchors the show, has interviews every day with like fantastic investors from all different walks of life. In particular, in the Kikko space, you might want to look for Gareth Soloway. I really respect Gareth. So he comes on the show every couple of weeks, it seems. And here we go. There's Gareth and Lynn, both are geniuses, both know a lot of stuff. The host, David, who's in Canada, really respects Gareth, and Gareth's a swing trader, and he's been learning swing trading, so they talk about the trades they're placing. Gareth's also of the view, similar to Ben, similar to myself, that Bitcoin still has more correction to do before it runs. That was a bit of consensus that we're drawing between at least people I follow. And I have to admit that before I came across Ben and Gareth, I was probably more bullish in the short term on Bitcoin about 5 months ago, and they both had a bearish perspective on the correction, and they were definitely correct, and they had good reason for it as well. Cryptobands are really fun. So there's a team of initially just two. You got Ran and I forget his mate. The sniper, I forget his name, lovely guy, and they've got a few other shows that they run. So there's a really cool Aussie guy who only just recently joined them, and he does a lot of DeFi. They've also got, oh, there we go, Gareth's popping up here as well. They interview people like Raoul Paul and like significant people, and they also have a show In the Game, which is really great if you're into gaming stocks. So this is an interesting channel. It's probably one of the largest channels in crypto, 550,000 subscribers. They have good quality content. They're pretty prescriptive. They give recommendations, and a lot of people follow the recommendations. So just bear that in mind. I take them with a grain of salt, but they're a lot of fun. If you want to learn about every part of crypto, these guys will give you some quality content, no question. Paul Barron, this guy's really interesting. His channel is very focused on gaming and the more high-risk NFT-oriented side of things, but he's got really good data. They have their own, what they call sentiment analysis, where they look at what's happening on Twitter, what's happening on Facebook, what are people saying, and they use that to indicate what's going to happen in the short term around stocks, and it's quite useful information. And a lot of it's very free, freely available. So good interviews as well. He speaks to the CEOs of a lot of these gaming platforms. Definitely worth having a look into. Paul Barron Network. And then Jamie Tree, different style, but Jamie will sort of take snippets of other people. So you don't ever see Jamie. He just he looks at Raoul Paul here and Warren Buffett versus Michael Saylor. These guys are obviously polarized. Cathie Wood. So if you follow someone like Jamie, you'll get a sense of who are the big names and probably the thought leaders in the space, and you get to hear different perspectives. I think that's quite useful as well. So how many is that? Is it 5 or 6 channels that I would say are great? I listen to many channels, not just these. I also listen on Twitter and I read articles as well. But if you're looking for some good sources of truth, I would rate all these people as either good broad sources of information or good direct channels. Good place to start. Importantly, do your own research. Make sure that whatever you're doing, you're coming up with your own view and you're making investment decisions based off what you believe. Finally, what have we got coming up? So Purpose Advisory, we run these events every week, and the next week's really exciting actually. So on the 24th of March 2022, 12:30 p.m. Sydney time. So that's various different times around the globe. You can access them from all around the world. We do it over Zoom. We're going to have a monk, a friend of ours, a friend of client, who is going to be sharing his experience 10 years as a monk, has since come back into the fold of normal life and sharing his insights. And I'm going to unpack practically how to meditate. Why would you meditate? What are the benefits? Harry himself, who's hosting the discussion, is a really passionate meditator. He does it a lot. He loves it. And it's going to be a really dynamic discussion. Bearing in mind, these conversations are open conversations. It's not a pitch. We're not teaching you things as much as we're unpacking topics and getting you to share your thoughts and learn from each other as well. Upcoming, then I'm going to run a discussion on should we buy an electric car, and the week after that, how to create work-life balance. So some really exciting topics coming up. I look forward to be able to see you at one of our upcoming events and reach out if we can do anything to help. Peace out.